Today is the last episode of our series, Holding the Door Open. And so far, what we've talked about is that how holding the door open is not an invitation to a religion or a church, but the invitation is ultimately to give a chance for people to have an encounter with Jesus. And in the first episode, we talked about how holding the door open just makes it easier for people to come through those doors. And it is the most powerful invitation that we can give to someone because it gives people an opportunity to meet Jesus. Next, in the next episode, we talked about how making an invitation, we should make a space that is comfortable for those people who want to stay hidden but still want to see Jesus from afar. And we also want to make a space, an environment that is comfortable for people who do want to be known. And then we also talked about how the joy that we can all experience when people come in through those doors. The joy that we experience when we meet somebody who are getting to know Jesus for the first time. And we also learned how all of heaven celebrates when people come in through those doors. Now, if you haven't caught up with the series, you can always go online. We are gracepoint.com/podcast, and you can follow up and see the previous episodes there. But for today, I want to just start off by saying, we all know why people look forward to the weekend. If you work like I do, you know how this feels, because you come to a point at the weekend, you're like, the end of the weekend, it's like, oh God, thank goodness I don't have to deal with those coworkers who complain about everything. Those coworkers who complain about that they work too much, or they don't work enough, or they have to work with these people and they even cause drama. Even if there's nothing to complain about, they have to look and find something to complain about. Or to the end of the week and you feel you're so relieved that, man, I don't have to deal with this boss anymore who just treats me like a number, right? Your boss sees you and they're like, hey, can you do this for me? And you're thinking to yourself, man, I have a name, so this boss just treats you like a number. Or you no longer have to deal with those customers that come into the store or come into your department who feel like they're the only customer in the store. They think they act like they're the only customer in the store. And all of that seriously can just become exhausting. And whether or not you work, there are these day-to-day experiences that we have that seem to just build up and become exhausting. And maybe some of you know what I'm talking about. Maybe some of you have experienced that before. Maybe some of you are experiencing that now. You feel like it's just another day where, man, I got to go through another day trying to manage to deal with this depression. Or it's another day where you feel like you're worried about your family's safety or their health. Or just another day where you feel like, man, I can't seem to get on the same page as my husband or my wife. Maybe you've been going through this experience and maybe you know what this felt like before. Or maybe you are feeling it now. That experience, that feeling of being drained, feeling burnt out. And for many of us, just feeling weary. And so many of us, some of us, have felt this weariness for so long that we can't even remember what it's like to not be tired. We can't remember what it's like to not feel burnt out. But now, there is a way where we can deal with this weariness that so many of us feel, so many of us have been feeling for so long. So what I want us to do today is I want us to take a look at what Jesus has to say about this weariness, the weariness that we all feel. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what Jesus says through a man named Matthew. Now, Matthew was one of Jesus' most closest friends. He was one of Jesus' disciples. And he recorded his experience with Jesus, and he wrote it in a book named Matthew. and he recorded what Jesus said, and that's where we are going to start. So Matthew 11:28 says, "Then Jesus said, 'Come to me, all of you.'" So look, Jesus says, "Come to me," right? And when he says, "Come to me," some of us might look at it and think, wait a minute, like Jesus isn't even asking me. He's just saying, "Come to me." I mean, he's not being polite. He's not even saying, "Please." Like, Jesus, what's your problem? Like, is there something wrong with him? Come to me? That's it? Or some people might think of it this way. You know, there are times, maybe you've experienced this before. There are times where I go to Target and I just shop for things at my house, and once in a while, I'll pass by the toy section. Not for me, obviously, but sometimes I walk by the Transformer section and I hear, just in the background, I hear this dad, "Let's go! Come on!" And I hear this kid, he says, "Dad, I really want this Transformer. Dad, I really want Optimus Prime. Can we please get it?" And then so I look back, and then I see the dad or the kid trying to pull the dad's arm, dragging him to the Transformers aisle. But the dad says, "No, come here. Let's go. Come on." And I know, I'm cringing to myself also right now. And I'm also thinking to myself, this is probably why I'm not going to have any children. But you see, this is the opposite of what Jesus is saying. Because here, when Jesus says, "Come to me," it is an invitation. It's an invitation to join him. He's saying, "Come on, I have something to show you. I have something for you." That is what Jesus is saying when he says, "Come on." And then it says, "Come on, all of you." Right? And this is huge for me. This is huge for me because I grew up in a church. I grew up in a church my whole life. And for most of my life, especially when I was young, I believed that if I didn't follow the rules, if I didn't follow all of the commandments, for those of you who have been in the church as well, if I don't follow all of the 10 commandments, then Jesus won't accept me. Heck, I was afraid that Jesus would even punish me if I didn't follow rules. And so I became afraid. But look, Jesus doesn't say, "Come to me, those of you who follow the rules," right? He doesn't say, "Come to me, those of you who are successful," or "those of you who are good looking." He doesn't say, "Come to me, those of you who have your life together." No, he says all. He says everyone. Whether you're Christian or you're not, whether you're man or woman, whether you're rich or poor, outcast or you're popular, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There is no criteria for you. Jesus says, all of you can come. And then it says in the next verse, "Then Jesus said, 'Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens.'" Now, there was a survey done in 2018, and it revealed that nearly 3/4 of American workers are showing up to work tired and making some costly mistakes. The report looked at workers and found most are worn out and drained, and that often results in sloppy work and health problems. I mean, does this sound familiar? Like, some of us, we come to work tired, right? But if you look at this survey, like, these are American workers, right? These are people who work in our public transportation. These are the people who handle our food. These are healthcare workers who are taking care of a family member that we love, right? These are pilots, these are engineers, and the list goes on, obviously. Now, I'm not saying that if you're tired, you're a bad person. I mean, come on. I'll admit, I'll be the first to admit that there are some days after work that I just want to stay in bed for days. And I'm not even exaggerating here. Like, when I get into bed, I just want to stay there for days. Like, give me 20 days. Just give me 20 days. And I'll have all my meals in bed. I will keep in touch with my friends and my family in bed. Heck, I would even contemplate, man, do I even need to get out of the shower? I mean, get out of bed to take a shower? Just give me 20 days. That would be so nice. Maybe, some of you have felt this way. This desperate need for rest. Because so many of us are weary. So many of us are carrying heavy burdens. So let's look at now what Jesus says as he continues. As he says, all of you who are weary and heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Look, if we're not careful here, we can miss a small detail that has a huge impact. Because when you see that Jesus says, and I will give you rest, the rest here is given, right? I will give you rest. So the rest that he's offering is not earned. Like, for example, it's not earned. So usually, if let's say you go for a workout, let's say you go to a gym, and you end up finishing all of your workouts, you complete all the reps you wanted to do, and afterwards you're kind of tired, right? You're kind of tired, maybe you have still a little bit of energy, but you feel tired and you want to rest. But you have that rest, and you said, man, and you think to yourself, I've earned this rest. I got to this point, I've worked so hard, and I've earned this rest. Or maybe it's like when you take an exam, right? You've been studying and working hard for so many weeks, preparing, and like I said, studying for the exam, and you get to the exam day, and you finish the exam, and right after the exam, you're like, man, I am done. It is time for me to rest. I've earned this rest. But what Jesus is saying here is that the rest that he is offering is not something that you have to achieve. Right? Jesus is saying the rest that Jesus is offering is something that you are given. And we continue to the next verse, and it says, take my yoke upon you. The yoke Jesus is talking about is this wooden crosspiece that you see between two oxen. And this yoke and the two oxen are used to move and carry farming supplies and also to carry heavy equipment. That's what it's used for during that time. And actually, even today, people use that way of carrying farming supplies. But during this time, also during Jesus' time, many people refer to Jesus as a rabbi. What a rabbi is basically a spiritual leader who knew everything about the Jewish laws. Now, not Jesus, but other rabbis were known to describe the religious laws as something that is very heavy to carry. It's very heavy to follow. And they would often describe it as a very heavy yoke. I want you to just keep this in mind. Keep that idea in mind for a moment, because we're going to come back to it a little bit later. I just want you to keep that in mind for a moment. We'll continue though right now, and it says, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart. Do you remember how your dad or your mom or your dad would punish you if you made a mistake or you did something wrong? Now for me, I knew that I was in deep trouble if my dad came up to me quietly and he said, Jeff, come here. That's what my dad does. If he wants to talk to me in private, he'll come up to me and he says, Jeff, come here. And I could feel it in my soul, and I can see it in his eyes. I'm in big trouble. I did something pretty darn bad. And so when my dad comes up to me, what's crazy is when he approaches me, he's not even looking straight at me. He doesn't make eye contact with me. Like when he's coming toward me, he's either looking to the ground or looking to the side. But then I just see his piercing eyes, and it's crazy because he's not looking at me, but it actually feels like he's looking at me. I don't know if it makes sense, but then that's when the harsh punishment comes, right? He comes to me, hey, Jeff, this is what you did wrong. The harsh punishment comes after that. But here, Jesus he's not looking to punish us. Jesus says, I'm going to teach you, but I'm going to teach you in a gentle and humble way. And you know why Jesus says he's going to, that, you know why Jesus says he is humble and gentle? The reason why is because he knows you. He knows you. He knows what you're having to deal with right now. He knows that what you're struggling with. He knows what you're worried about. He knows that you're anxious. He knows that you're afraid. He knows that sometimes in life you can feel so weary that you can't put words to fully express how tired you are, how drained and how burnt out you are. So Jesus says, I am humble and I am gentle because he knows what you're going through and he doesn't want you to feel afraid. He wants you to be able to come to him. He won't punish you because he is humble and gentle. Because we will make mistakes. We will make mistakes. That's just how we are as people, right? That's just how our nature is. But Jesus says, I am humble and gentle. I know you will make mistakes because I know what you're going through and I won't punish you. We continue the verse and it says, right, let me teach you because I am humble and gentle at heart and you will find rest. Now, when many of you, if you think about when you hear the idea of finding rest, maybe for some of you, you think about going on a long vacation. And, lately vacations really haven't been for me because actually my cousin and I were planning to go to New York in November. And if you know anything about New York, that there's a lot of good food over there. There's a lot of good restaurants. So I know that my stomach is not going to be getting any rest. But, if for you a long vacation comes to mind and that's where you feel like you could find rest, that's good. I know that for some people, finding good rest is in meditation, or they can find rest in having a good walk out in nature. I mean, so all of these things, they're great to do, right? You should do them. We should do them, right? It's good rest for our body and it's good rest for our mind. But the thing here is, Jesus is inviting us to find rest. And yes, it's for the body and for the mind, but it's also for something deeper. And we'll see that here in the next verse. It says, take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Now many of you know that the world is having a hard time finding ways to cope with the weariness, the exhaustion, the tiredness that we all feel. It's difficult to deal with it, and it's difficult to find solutions to how to deal with all the weariness. But what we find sometimes is that we see in the world that people will sometimes resort to either pure entertainment to find rest. They might try to find rest through drugs or through sex or through alcohol. But what Jesus is doing here is he is inviting for us to find rest. And yes, it's rest for the body and the mind, but it's also rest for something deeper. Rest for the soul. Right? Because the world can't give you rest. The world can't give you rest for this part of you that longs so much for rest. The world can't give you rest for your souls. We continue in the next verse and it says, for my yoke is easy to bear and the burden I give you is light. Remember I told you earlier to hang on to the idea of that rabbis talked about, following the Jewish laws is very heavy, and that they usually would compare it to a heavy yoke. But look what Jesus is saying here. Jesus is saying that his yoke isn't heavy. It's easy. And he's telling you that, I will teach you, and I'm going to teach you in a humble and gentle way. I'm going to teach you so that you know that my yoke, the way to follow me, is easy. It's going to be light. Now, there's this great quote that I found in the book, The Chronological Life of Christ. It was written by Mark Moore, and it says, "The Jews did not consider the law cruel slavery, but a gift. It proved that they were God's special people. Therefore, the yoke of the law was not abject oppression, but voluntarily placing oneself under the direct rule of God and working for Him. But the Pharisees added so many rules to God's law that it did become a terrible burden. But Jesus frees us from all of that by inviting us to be yoked with Him. The yoke of Jesus, as understood by Matthew, was not one of fidelity to a code, but of dedication to a person who was God's representative among men." Because here's the thing, right? And you all know this. Life is random. Tragedy will come. And there will be those people who criticize you. We will always face challenges, right? Whether it's in our marriage or whether it's at our job. Many of us will feel pain because of a very difficult health condition. Some of us might feel, anxiety because we're worried about finances, right? That's why there still will be burden. We're not going to be able to escape burden in this world. But Jesus' invitation here is that we don't have to carry these burdens alone. He says He'll be right beside us. That's what makes His yoke easy to bear. And what it makes burdens so light, the burdens that we will face in life so light, is because He is the one who will take our burdens from us and carry it Himself. And through it all, He will give us rest. The kind of rest that the world can't offer. This rest that we don't have to earn, this rest that we don't have to do something to achieve, this rest that is given to us. It's a kind of rest that's for our minds and our bodies, but it's also rest for the part of our body that longs for rest, and it's rest for the soul. So Jesus' invitation here, He offers what the world cannot, and that is true rest, deep peace, and renewal for the soul. So we're all familiar here with the weariness, right? The weariness of the world. But there are also some people here. There are also some people out there, maybe many of you, who already knows about this rest that Jesus is talking about. Maybe you already know what it's like, and you've experienced what it's like to have your burdens just a little bit lighter because you know Jesus. Just a little bit lighter because you know that Jesus is humble and He is gentle. There are many of us that know that, but there are also many of other people who are struggling to find a solution to the rest, to the weariness that so many people experience. Because like I said earlier, sometimes the world just tells them that the solution and the way to find rest is just through just entertainment and drugs, like I said, sex or alcohol. But we have an opportunity here as a community, as a church, where we can share the rest that Jesus gives us. And we have a chance to extend that invitation out to the world. Because next week we'll be starting a message series called Explore God. And what that is and what that series is about is it's a unique opportunity for us to go out and invite people and give them a chance to encounter Jesus. Because we know that there are so many questions out there about God, faith, and purpose. But Explore God is a unique way where we can come together as a city and look at these questions in an open and authentic way. So I would ask that if if you out there, if you can make a commitment to share our website, exploregodsouthcity.com, I ask that if you can make a commitment to share that website link to 2 people, just 2 people. Because I know that there are people out there who are just going to share the website to like 20, 30 people. Right? But if you can make a commitment to share the website to just 2 people, you're giving people an opportunity to meet Jesus, right? And when you make that commitment, I will pray that God will give you the encounter with other people, to give them a chance, give you a chance to share that experiences that you've had with Jesus, and give them a chance also to meet Jesus.
Thank you for joining us for this week's message. Gracepoint Church is located in South San Francisco, California. For additional content or to find out more information about Gracepoint Church, visit us online at